President Bush's car gets a little bit closer, Tom.
Thank you, Campbell Brown. Let's go back to Maria Shriver. Maria?
Tom, the protesting is now very intense as we're coming up here. A lot of National Organization for Women screaming fraud. Bush stole the election. The police are now in about 3 or 4 rows deep along here trying to push back protesters. People taking off their clothes, protesting fur. You can see right here, people down in the street being handcuffed. Police are in riot gear. A lot of screaming, a lot of pushing, a lot of yelling. It's hard to tell exactly how much the president can see, but he can hear all of this and see it. People very angry over here as we push back. The police standing at attention, as I said, 3 or 4 rows deep, and not taking any chances. So that's where we're coming up now a little bit onto Pennsylvania and about 9th Street. And there are, I see very few actual Bush-Cheney signs or pro-Bush signs in here. Back to you, Tom, as we'll come up here now on Pennsylvania 9th. You see police on horseback here, police in riot gear running over here to the side. It is quite an angry crowd, and then trying to mix in with quite a positive crowd. It's kind of hard to say who's in the majority right here. Some people here obviously trying to enjoy themselves, and others obviously here trying to make a very distinct point. Tom?
Thanks very much, NBC's Maria Shriver. I don't remember a demonstration like this at an inauguration for a long time. The demonstrations that occurred in 1973 when Richard Nixon was elected to a second term were mostly about the war.
Right.
Watergate had not yet really risen to a national consciousness at that point. It was later in the spring that we were aware of that. Mike Deaver, this is a president who has 500,000 fewer votes in the popular tally than his opponent. That does present some special challenges to him from a political point of view, doesn't it?
It may, but you know, he seems to have decided that he's going to be more like Ronald Reagan and the note Reagan carried than the note JFK carried. Kennedy carried these numbers around with him, showing the closeness of the race. Reagan had something that he believed and had on his desk that said, "Yes, we can." And I think Bush is going to follow that more than he's going to follow the Kennedy model. I think he believes that I'm going to lead as if I have a mandate.
But Doris Kearns Goodwin, he is going to have to reach out to some groups who do feel disenfranchised, and he acknowledged that in his speech there today.
Right. Not as much as some previous presidents who had unusual circumstances acknowledged it. John Quincy Adams specifically said, you know, I know that there's peculiar circumstances that made me come here, and I know I have less confidence than previous predecessors, so I ask for your indulgence. I think he wanted more confidence than that, but he did reach out to Mr. Gore, at least in saying he conducted himself well and with honor and dignity.
Now, for those of you who are watching, obviously there will be intelligence agents, as it were, in that crowd. They'll be radioing those people who are walking alongside the limousine, telling them what they can expect as they approach different blocks along Pennsylvania Avenue. Maria, let's go back to you briefly.
Tom, as we're coming up here on Pennsylvania, about 10th Street, security is very intense, as you can see, all along the president's limo. People here seemed not quite as many signs as in the last block, but there's still more as we come up to the next block. A lot of people screaming, not our mandate, not our president. But then right in here, you see people who are holding signs called Celebrating America's Spirit Together, which is the theme of this inauguration. So I would say in this block right here, people seem very happy, optimistic. They have bleacher seats. So there might be supporters of the Bush-Cheney ticket. And then obviously in the last block, we had a lot of protests. So right now, I would say this is probably a good block. If he's going to get out, this would be the block to get out.
All right.
Back to you, Tom.
All right, thanks, Maria. Well, they did confine the protesters to certain areas, and we'll be watching and monitoring all of this when we return right after this. George W. Bush and Laura, the new President of the United States and First Lady. I don't know how much they're looking out the window. They're going to see some signs that are very critical of how they've gotten here, thinking that he lost the election, really. One sign saying re-elect Al Gore, other signs critical of his stands on abortion. Then a number of other freelance protesters about any number of issues, including fur. The police presence has been, as you can see, enormous throughout this parade route. We think that most of the protesters have been confined to a couple of blocks. And as the president gets closer to 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue, which is the White House, of course, the reviewing stand, we do think he'll get out of the car with his wife and walk probably the last block or so. So far, there have been no untoward incidents. There have been some confrontations between the police. Earlier today, there were some fairly violent dust-ups as the protesters try to move out of their area and toward Pennsylvania Avenue, and more than a dozen arrests altogether, but no reports of injuries of any kind. Ann Curry is down there. Tim, let's go down and get a check from ground level. Ann?
All right, Tom, we're in fact missed a lot of the protesters here on Freedom Plaza. There are thousands of people here. They're carrying all kinds of signs. Hail to the thief is what many of the signs read. The day that democracy died, Bush equals racism, Mother Earth is crying, Ashcroft, some bad signs about Ashcroft. So a lot of different sentiments being represented here. A lot of very angry people gathered. However, we should also point out that just behind all of these protesters here in the stands, Tim, make a turn over here. You can see there are some supporters here for, can you make a turn here, Tim? And you see the supporters are also standing and waiting to see President George W. Bush and Mrs. Bush come by. But we've heard a lot of booing, Tom, a lot of very upset people. No question that this is going to be a very mixed and very loud crowd as this motorcade passes, which should be any time now, Tom.
All right, thanks very much, NBC's Ann Curry. Let's go right back to Maria now, where she is tracking the presidential motorcade progress and its pause there on Pennsylvania Avenue. Maria?
That's right, Tom. We've paused at about Pennsylvania and 13th, which is not a very good place to pause a motorcade since it seems to be filled with protesters who are carrying the signs. You can see them. You are not my leader. Depose King George. Hail to the thief. Pictures of the president saying wanted for murder, for death penalty, illegitimate Bush. Very, very tough signs here. As I said, the motorcade has stopped about a couple feet further down here. A lot of very angry people. You can see the lines, about 4 or 5 rows of police thick right here where we have stopped. It's called Checkpoint 4. And they're screaming and chanting, not my president, not our president. So we're here, we're stopped. As I said, the president's car, you can see over my shoulder back here. Several of the cops kind of looking around, wondering, I think, what is the reason that we've stopped. But I guess there's a little bit of a tie-up, so I'll send it back to you. Tom?
All right, thanks, Maria Shriver. This president did lose the popular vote. He did invoke the need for civility and compassion today in his inaugural address. That obviously will be the great test for him.
Bush will get out of his, looks like he's going to do it now, get out of his car right around this turn and walk the rest of the way. It's a much more secure area, and usually the Secret Service does not mind the president making this final walk because it is an area that they feel they can secure. Once he reaches the reviewing stand, he may decide to walk right up into the stand as his father did, or come through the White House. We'll wait and see, Tom.
All right, thank you very much, Claire Shipman. Let's go to Maria Shriver now, who's down there in the thick of it all.
Tom, you can see the president has just gotten out of his limo. This is the place to get out. As I said earlier, he should stay in the car right now. It's a good place. You can see him getting out. There's a lot of people here. Texas hats on there. He seems to be walking over in this direction. I can't see that much behind me, but everybody here, there are no protest signs here. These seems to be people who obviously love their new president, are excited to see him. They've all got Texas hats on and seem to be excited with the prospect that he could get out, that they could see him up close and personal. I don't know how much you can see over my own shoulder back here. He's waving to the crowd. I don't know if you can see the shot of him, and holding his wife's hand, walking there right behind his car. It's over here now. I don't know how much you can actually see of him. Obviously, the security very tight. The weather, it's still raining, but not obviously as hard as it has been. And these are people that came out to support this man and Cheney, Vice President Cheney. As I say, a lot of people with Texas hats on. These are people who have tickets, who want to be here. who regard this man as their president. You can see the reserve signs. So these are Bush-Cheney supporters. We're coming upon the reviewing stand where the president's family is. So that obviously will be an emotional moment. Back to you, Tom.
Inauguration coverage, 2001, on a nasty but it could be worse kind of day in Washington.
Where do we want justice? Where do we want it? Down!
On the day George W. Bush was inaugurated, tens of thousands of Americans poured into the streets of D.C. in one last attempt to reclaim what had been taken from them. They pelted Bush's limo with eggs and brought the inauguration parade to a halt. The plan to have Bush get out of the limo for the traditional walk to the White House was scrapped. Bush's limo hit the gas to prevent an even larger riot. No president had ever witnessed such a thing on his inauguration day.
There's still some news from the outgoing Clinton administration. A number of those presidential pardons we've been talking about have been released. And on the list, and this is just a partial list so far, Henry Cisneros, the former housing secretary. Others getting pardons, according to CNN, that's the source on this, are Patty Hearst, the president's brother, Roger Clinton. But there were no pardons for Webster Hubbell. But there was a pardon granted for Susan McDougal, one of the names that reportedly had been a source of discussion and controversy among the Clinton White House aides. The official list will be out shortly, and we'll read it all to you. Apparently, one person who had been lobbying for a pardon, Michael Milken, was not among those who was granted one by the outgoing president. We're going to watch some more.
But now that the votes are counted, it is time for the votes to count. The Vice President's lawyers have indicated he will challenge the certified election results. I respectfully ask him to reconsider.
You know something? We are going to win Florida. Mark my words. You can write it down.